Hi class. Talking about chapter one, the nature of nature and role of goals in and for mathematics instruction. So the page I decided to select was it started on page two. Really, well, the paragraph I wanted on the page I wanted was starts on page two, um, and ends on page three. I picked this page because I just felt like it was really informative. Because when I think about goals, I'm really not. I don't know. My goals never. I feel like I didn't put as much effort into them as the writers of this um text are telling me I should, and it's kind of actually motivating. Like I kind of want to just go out and see what I could do for the next. I mean, I got my scope and sequence already, so I mean, kind of go out and kind of pace. Looking at Eureka, figuring out, okay, what can I put right here? What can I put right here? I actually went to a professional development on math aligned standards today, and she was talking about goals, and she was like, or the objectives of the lesson, and she was like, you could just take them from the bottom of the Eureka lessons, like it says it explicitly on the page. And then when I go to this text I'm reading, I'm like, whoa, they're putting a lot more effort into it than just with that little line or two at the bottom of the Eureka pages say. So I thought this was kind of an interesting page because it kind of just talks about what I was actually talking about today in my professional development. And when I think about goals, I don't know, I always thought back to SMART goals, which they kept talking about over and over and over again in my undergrad experience. And they would always tell you, oh no, it has to be this. Oh no, it's not specific enough. Oh no, it's really not measured very well. I'm like, okay, I'll try again. And even when I thought it was wrong, or when I thought it was wrong, they turned out to be right. And even when I thought it was right, it was never right. But yeah, I just thought this page was really interesting because it starts off talking about you need to explain, explicitly tell what the students are going to learn, and then the second one is like specificity. Specificity. Sorry if I didn't say that right, but I was looking at the learning goals C, and I'm like, okay, that's a big jump from B. A, I can understand why that wasn't right off the bat, and then B, it's kind of something I'm used to putting in my lesson plans, and C is kind of something more of what if somebody asks, I'm gonna tell them what the purpose of this is and what how they align to each other. But when I'm looking at C, I'm like, oh, that's kind of something I wouldn't mind posting up on my board. It's kind of like a built-in anchor chart, and I think that's kind of cool because if you post all that information on the board, students have no choice but to look at it every day or notice the changes every day. If you write it when the kids are in the room like I do, I write it as I'm telling them kind of what we're about to start working on. But I think that's kind of cool. It's really like a little mini anchor chart to me. In my class, we just use the WALT and WILF. The WALT is we are learning to, and the WILF is what I'm looking for. So my WALT is kind of like if I was to use a objective that was online on a pre-made lesson from like a curriculum guide or something, I'd use that for my WALT. And for my WILF, it's something that I'm gonna put that's more specific based upon the lesson that I actually plan on doing in my class. Because y'all don't know me, but I don't explicitly stay to what those curriculum guides say because sometimes I feel like the activities just don't make sense, and then it's just kind of, I feel like it adds further confusion to the kids instead of something that I could come up with myself that would just, get them on their learning path. The paragraph I chose was on page 4. It starts off saying, all of this suggests that mathematical learning goals can serve as reference points for sizing up and guiding mathematical discussions of student work. When used by skills teachers, the goals become the North Stars by which to select and steer students' partially informed ideas towards important and shared mathematical ideas and concepts. There is emergent evidence that greater specificity of goals leads to better instruction, specifically to instruction in which the cognitive demand of high-level tasks is maintained throughout the lesson. Hunt and Stein found that teachers who had spent more time in pre-observation conference with the coach clarifying goals by working and reflecting on mathematics available in the task were also more likely to maintain the level of cognitive demand that the task when they actually enacted the task. So, what I mainly got out of that is the more work you put into kind of creating the lesson and the goals for the lesson, the better it's going to turn out. And I like that they included that it was pre-observation conference or just working with somebody else, because I do feel like if you have to explain something to somebody else, it requires you to put more thought in it. So like if I'm sharing an idea with a coworker or something and I see and I'm just kind of just telling them the basics of the lesson, they're gonna be like, what? Like, oh, we're working on, like, say we're working on the same subject, but if I just tell them, oh yeah, we're gonna do a project on it, or yeah, we're gonna do a project based upon the skill, but and I'm gonna give them this materials. I'm not really telling them, you know, all that's gonna go into that lesson and all that's important about that lesson and the main things they need to hit on. And so if they were to go to they would go to their class and try to do the same thing, they kind of miss out on some key points just because I didn't share everything with them or share my goals. Like they knew the content and they knew what the focus of the lesson was on, but they didn't know how I was doing it because I didn't really give them clear goals. So if they were to go do it in their class, it'd probably look a lot different just because of the fact that I did not share all that specific end goal. Yeah, we all have the same standards, but like there's different ways to get your kids to master that standard. So I thought that was a really interesting paragraph. And my sentence I chose is on page 5. It's in the middle of that first paragraph under developing mathematical knowledge for teaching. It says, furthermore, teachers will not only develop a deeper understanding of how all the concepts, ideas, and procedures underlying learning goals across multiple lessons are related, but how they also build upon each other. So, in the same professional development that I went to today about the standards aligned math for Common Core and Eureka, we talked about lessons building upon each other. And I thought that this was interesting again because it popped up and it was so relevant because I was actually, learning about that today. But, sorry. They were telling, the curriculum specialist for mathematics was telling me that, I'm sorry. was telling the class that all of the lessons in Eureka are designed to build upon each other. And you can pick the ones that, you can look through the implementation guide for the ones that remediate and which are not necessary to teach, the enrichment lessons who are good for your higher learners, or if you're finishing your classes just above and they end up finishing things early and it doesn't match with the scope and sequence well, and then the necessary things that are on grade level. But in the overview guide, she was telling me about, she was saying about how the fact that we choose some teachers choose our lessons based upon what would be easy for the student to get and what they don't think the students will get. And I was like, that doesn't really make sense to me because, we know that we have to teach all of these different things, even if they're not something that the teachers want to know. They're important for the students to get just because they kind of build upon each other. So like if you didn't start with the Eureka in first and second, kindergarten, first and second, it's hard for you to catch on just in third. But I thought that was that was an interesting sentence just because, even though this says going through multiple lessons and how they're related and built upon each other, you can kind of do it within the grade levels too. So if you didn't learn it with other grade levels, it's hard to just catch up. Like the arrow way, if you weren't taught in first grade, it's kind of hard to to start it in second grade and have any idea what they're talking about when they say, "Oh yeah, you were taught this last year and you weren't actually taught it last year." I feel like it's the same with the lessons. So if you skip out or you just touch the surface of some of these lessons when you have to like build upon it, like doing word problems or something, or use it to do a multi-step problem, it's harder because you haven't been taught multiple ways to get to it. I mean, to get to your answer, and um, just multiple ways to attack that problem. So um, once the teacher understands, and like I didn't know that you had to like really read through the module overview, but once the teacher understands the purpose of all the lessons and how they're eventually going to help the students, it doesn't matter if you've been teaching this year after year after year, you know, there's always something changing. So I mean, it's worthwhile to look into to really see how and why they're learning this. It might not, even if we don't think it's important for our lessons and our pacing of our year, it might be important for the next year, for them to get that, or the next couple months later when they have to see this again and you thought it was all over with for them.